Warm daily life plus single female lead+no system+healing+super sweet dog food. Upon waking up, Su Yang, who was suffering from mental illness, discovered that there was a lovely young girl in his family. The girl claimed to have transformed from a jade pot and a spring bottle. Su Yang. Girl. Why aren't you talking? Are you sick? Su Yang. I'm probably sick, should I not sleep for a while? As things developed, Su Yang found that something was starting to go wrong. Su Yang. So are you really the bottle becoming? Girl. It's a jade pot and spring bottle. Su Yang silently thought to himself, what is the taste of drinking from a jade pot and spring bottle? Years from now. Su Yang said, can people and bottles have children? Girl. Deng Tuzi, Zinai. Is this an illusion in Chapter 1? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In a standalone apartment located in the south of Yang'an City. Su Yang woke up leisurely. Looking at the skylight outside the window, one can tell that it should be getting late. He was busy until early morning last night, so he turned off his alarm and slept in. Yawning and stretching lazily, Su Yang picked up his phone and glanced at it. It's already 9:30, but he's not worried about being late at all. As an independent photographer, he doesn't have a fixed working time and can sleep until what time he wants. Just as he was staring blankly at the ginkgo tree outside the window, thinking about what to eat in the morning, you're awake. Suddenly, a girl's voice rang out in the room. And it's very close. The unfamiliar voice caused Su Yang's heart to pause for a moment. Turning his head, he saw a lovely girl. She stood on the inner side of the bed, slightly protruding and looking down at herself from a high position. Su Yang stared blankly at the young girl. Are you? The girl confidently introduced herself and said, my name is Honglu. The red is red, the dew is white. Red. White dew. The newly awakened brain was still somewhat sluggish, and Su Yang was unable to connect the two. However, why are you in my bedroom? Su Yang propped up his body. The girl named Honglu, with a naive and sincere expression on her face, said, you are a good person. Uncle and uncle have asked me to come find you. Uncle and uncle. What are you looking for me for? I'm homeless now, you should be taking me in, right? Taking you in. Su Yang frowned slightly, and the girl answered very seriously, but he always felt that the bull's head was not the horse's mouth. Getting up from the bed, Su Yang looked at the girl and noticed something unusual. Her dark eyes were very agile, and her fair face still carried a hint of curiosity and innocence. But she was wearing a bright red skirt and ancient attire. Embroidered with golden patterns, the style is simple yet not outdated, giving the girl a graceful feeling. The hair was coiled in an extremely intricate style, adorned with golden hair accessories. But the most beautiful one is still that face, small and round. The facial features are like meticulously crafted works of art, with the nose, eyes, mouth seamlessly complementing each other, forming an extremely cute appearance. This girl is very beautiful. Very beautiful. More than all the women Su Yang knows, but the problem is, Su Yang doesn't know her. Su Yang, currently 24 years old, has upright facial features. Single, living alone, without any bad habits. Apart from his only friend Lin Xianping, no one else has ever been able to stay overnight in his apartment, let alone the opposite sex. Last night, he stayed at home alone fixing pictures and was busy until 2 o'clock in the morning. When I woke up, there was a cute girl in the room who was seeking shelter. Is it a thief? Impossible. Because she is so beautiful that it's hard to believe she's a bad person. Wait. Su Yang seems to have thought of something. He turned his head again and looked at the girl. Her skin is smooth, white, and tender, and her whole figure is polished from a whole piece of jade. No pores can be seen, and no defects can be found. Too perfect and flawless to resemble a real person. Upon discovering this, Su Yang's expression gradually relaxed as he had found a reasonable explanation. Turning his head to look at the bedside, there were several bottles of medicine placed there. Medications for treating schizophrenia. It has not been opened for a long time, and there is already a layer of light gray on the lid. A few years ago, Su Yang's parents passed away unexpectedly, and while he was in college, he suffered a severe blow and developed schizophrenia. After treatment, he has come out of the pain. But at this moment, he suspected that his illness had relapsed again. Schizophrenia often presents with hallucinations, such as hearing non-existent sounds or seeing non-existent people. If you can realize it's an illusion, then the situation is okay. But if you are addicted to hallucinations and cannot extricate yourself, then it will be troublesome. This suddenly appearing cute girl should be her own illusion. However, being able to realize that one has hallucinations indicates that the condition is not severe and one is still maintaining self-awareness. Su Yang recalled the doctor's advice and decided not to communicate with the girl as much as possible. So he silently put on his clothes, ignored the girl, pushed open the bedroom door, and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. "Why aren't you talking? Then I'll assume you're agreeing, and I'll stay with you from now on. What's your name?" Honglu followed him bouncing and jumping, as if very happy. Su Yang did not answer her question. Pa Ji, the crisp sound of stepping on the wooden floor made Su Yang take a glance and realize that she was not wearing shoes. Little feet are tender and tender, as if they are not as long as their own palms. "It's already autumn, isn't the floor cool? Are you cooking? What did this thing burn? Why did the fire come out of nowhere? Why aren't you talking? These fried eggs are so fragrant. Are you not afraid of damaging so many things in your cabinet? What is this seasoning? Message. What is it?" Honglu's small mouth seemed to be wound up, asking incessantly, making Su Yang feel a bit dizzy. However, he still held back and did not respond. Su Yang found that she seemed to lack common sense, not even familiar with common household items such as natural gas and refrigerators. Why did I fantasize about such an innocent girl? Su Yang doesn't quite understand. More than 10 minutes later, Su Yang cooked breakfast. Very ordinary, a large bowl of clear noodles and soup, a few vegetable leaves, and a fried egg. Serving the table, Su Yang began to eat. Taking a sip, the hot and steaming noodles flowed down the stomach, dispelling the autumn cold and bringing a touch of warmth. Eating noodles, Su Yang was about to open his phone to browse news when he turned his head and saw Honglu sitting next to him, staring blankly at the noodles in his bowl. Still swallowing incessantly. Gulu Gulu. Su Yang is certain that the voice was not made by himself. Honglu blushed and rubbed her stomach, feeling a bit embarrassed. She said weakly, "It's okay, you can eat yours and leave me a mouthful of soup. It would be even better if there were 2 more noodles left." Su Yang couldn't bear to hear this. After all, eating in front of a hungry person was too cruel. Even if it's just her own illusion. At the same time, he was also a bit curious. Can hallucinations also lead to hunger? Can she really eat? So Su Yang stood up and took a bowl, divided the noodles in half, and put the fried egg into another bowl. Then pushed this half bowl of noodles in front of Honglu. "Is it for me?" Honglu seems a bit incredulous. Su Yang remained silent and continued to eat noodles. Honglu hesitated for a moment, but couldn't resist the temptation of delicious food. She picked up her chopsticks and started to suck the noodles. Su Yang observed quietly with the corner of his eye, curious and with a hint of doubt. The noodles that were eaten by Honglu should have also entered their own stomachs, right? Or is it still in the bowl, just invisible to oneself? But Su Yang didn't dwell on this. After eating the noodles in a few bites, he opened his address book and found a phone number he hadn't contacted in a long time. Chapter 2. Sure enough, there are still flaws in this illusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Are you going to draw for me in Chapter 3? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Cross-border tomb raiding gang caught. A major tomb robber in Yangon has been arrested, and another precious cultural relic has been lost. We are now soliciting clues from the public. Click in and take a look. It says that yesterday afternoon the police caught a group of tomb robbers, preparing to sell a batch of precious cultural relics overseas, but were caught by the police on the spot. But still lost a precious cultural relic, offering a reward of 50,000 yuan to gather clues. Red glazed painted golden jade teapot in spring vase, June kiln. The news also released pictures, which should have been taken by the group of tomb robbers. It is not very clear, but it can be seen that the bottle's shape is small and exquisite, and the bright red color is unique among porcelain. Seeing that color, Su Yang felt a bit familiar and turned his head to glance at Honglu. It was somewhat similar to the color of her skirt, which was also embroidered with golden patterns. Looking at her delicate appearance, Su Yang suddenly had inspiration. Such a beautiful girl, such beautiful clothing, would definitely look great if photographed. But she is her own illusion. Even if taken in a photo, others probably won't be able to see her. But if you first draw with paper and pen, and then use a computer to edit the picture, it may reach the level of 70.8% of the actual shooting. Su Yang self-taught painting for a while and felt a bit itchy. But after thinking about it, I hesitated a bit. Will doing so worsen my illness? Just as Su Yang hesitated, Honglu kicked her slippers and approached. She naturally saw the picture on the screen as well. The girl stared at the jade pot and spring bottle on the screen, surprised and curious. How could this thing have its own appearance on it? He seems to be a great painter. Is it possible that he painted this? But how could he have his own painting? Is it difficult that he already knows his identity? It is because of this that he despises himself. The girl's mood was complex, and she carefully moved her gaze, stealing a glance at Su Yang. But I didn't notice that I was a bit too close to Su Yang. The hair accessory hanging from her ear caught Su Yang's gaze. That is a few strands of golden string, hanging from the pearl flower, with droplets of jade tied at the end, clear and soft, crystal clear. Just hang it on the back of Su Yang's hand, gently raise your hand to touch it. Following the golden thread upwards, I saw a small ear hidden between the green threads. The earlobe was white and smooth, as if soaked in milk. Pearl earrings hang on the earlobe, swaying gently with jade. Pearl white, jade smooth, but neither is as fair and smooth as a girl's skin. Su Yang's gaze involuntarily shifted to Honglu's profile. The curves formed by her delicate facial features give people a unique sense of beauty. Her chin is small, her red lips are beaded, and her nose is delicate. The most agile ones are still those eyes, with eyelashes trembling from time to time, like a window that reflects her innermost emotions, anxiety, nervousness, shyness, curiosity. All clearly presented in her eyes. As a photographer, Su Yang naturally became more sensitive and had a stronger impulse to capture this beautiful appearance. Discovering that Su Yang was looking at her, Honglu felt a little nervous and also a little pleased. Because no matter how she spoke or asked questions before, Su Yang deliberately ignored her and didn't even look at her directly. Anyway, he already knew his identity, so Honglu boldly pointed to the picture on the screen and asked the question, "Do you think I look better now, or is it better like this? What is there to compare to a bottle?" Su Yang didn't dwell on the girl's problem. He is now even more conflicted about whether to record the appearance of Honglu. On the one hand, this is an instinct as a photographer, and on the other hand, it is a concern for schizophrenia. However, without much hesitation, Su Yang made a decision. It's just drawing, as long as you realize she's hallucinating, it's not a big deal, and even if it's serious, there's medicine at home. Thinking of this, Su Yang got up and went to the room to find pencils and sketching paper. Honglu didn't get an answer. Seeing Su Yang get up and enter the room, she became curious and turned back to check the specific content of the news. She knew most of the words, half guessing and half blurring, and also understood the content of the news. Seeing uncles and uncles also rescued, I felt a little excited and couldn't help but cheer and jump. In no time, Su Yang returned to the living room with a drawing board and a pen and paper. Seeing Honglu bouncing around, he inexplicably felt that his mood had improved a lot. But Honglu leaned in again and began to ask questions. Is the police a constable? What is the museum, the treasure trove? What punishment will tomb raiders be sentenced to? Imprisonment or exile? Will there be any reward if you help catch those tomb robbers? What is the relationship between being caught as a tomb thief and oneself? Saying something I don't understand again. Su Yang still ignored her and took out a new pencil. He then brought a utility knife and began to sharpen the pen. Honglu watched his movements curiously. What is this, a pen? Why does it turn into powder with just a scratch? Your knife looks so strange. It looks quite sharp, but you need to be careful. I haven't painted for a long time, I feel a bit rusty. With patience, I sharpened my pen. Then he pointed to the sofa and said, sit down. Honglu was stunned for a moment, realizing that he was talking to herself. She immediately obediently sat on the sofa, looking at Su Yang expectantly. Su Yang pulled the computer chair over, aimed it at the girl and sat down, while picking up the drawing board. The first step in drawing is, of course, to observe the object. Seeing Su Yang scrutinizing herself with a pen, Honglu also guessed what he was going to do and was somewhat surprised. Are you going to draw for me? Su Yang remained silent, but opened the curtains to improve the lighting in the living room. Honglu also tidied up her skirt, then closed her legs together, folded her hands into the cuffs, and sat motionless on her legs. The posture is very upright, but it's a bit unnatural. Although he mainly took photos of the scenery, Su Yang also took many people's photos and instinctively said, relax your sitting posture and don't be too nervous. Honglu blinked her eyes, as if she was at a loss and didn't know where to put her hands. Su Yang felt a bit helpless and wanted to give her some guidance on her sitting posture, but he didn't want to communicate much. So he opened the computer folder and found a model photo he had taken before, gesturing for her to follow suit. Honglu glanced at her and blushed slightly. Would this be a bit indecent? Su Yang picked up a pencil and a drawing board and remained silent. After hesitating for a moment, Honglu took off her shoes and lay on her side on the sofa, holding her head with her right hand. Previously, my body was covered by a dress, but now the dress is pressed against me, revealing the undulating curves with a distinct and uneven appearance. Her face was only slightly flushed, but it was very noticeable against her fair skin. The cuteness did not decrease, but with two more charms, Su Yang felt a momentary loss of focus. Su Yang took a deep breath and felt even more convinced that his decision was not wrong. Such beautiful things should be recorded. Can I go with you in chapter 4? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pencil makes a rustling sound on the drawing paper. More than 10 minutes later, Su Yang stopped writing, examined his own work, and then looked at the young girl. Not very good. He tore off the sketch paper, kneaded it into a ball, threw it into the trash can, replaced it with a white piece of paper, and started writing again. But not long after, the above actions were repeated again. After several times like this, there were several balls of waste paper in the trash can. Su Yang was slightly irritable and frowned. He felt that his level was not enough to present the innocence and cuteness of a young girl. Too many photos taken in daily life, has my drawing skills declined? A bit distressed, wanting to give up but feeling unwilling. Is it difficult to draw? Honglu asked softly. Su Yang regained his senses and only then noticed that the girl had been maintaining this position for almost an hour, during which time she seemed to have not moved. He has worked as a model and knows that even in any comfortable position, sticking to it without moving for more than 10 minutes can be considered a torture. Her hands should be very sore, right? Su Yang felt a little guilty and was about to give up when Hong Lu pointed to the computer and said, "I see that your drawing skills are very high. It should be my problem, isn't it, that I'm too stupid? Uncle Tang always says I'm stupid, and he has taught me how to draw, but I can't learn much." Seeing that she seemed to feel guilty about it, Su Yang hesitated for a moment before picking up the camera. "Smile. Hee hee. Just smile, don't show your teeth, understand? Oh, is that okay? Too silly, forget it, let's change our posture. How to do it? Lie down, look up, and raise your feet." In the room, Su Yang commanded, and Hong Lu followed suit. He also brought in 2 light filling boards and a few props to match. Half an hour later, a set of well-behaved, cute, and slightly silly style photos appeared on the computer screen. Looking at her colorful self on the screen, Hong Lu glared at her. "You are so awesome. This is exactly like me. So many paintings have been drawn so quickly." Su Yang sighed and couldn't help but explain, "This thing is called a photo. It wasn't drawn, it was taken by a machine." Upon hearing Su Yang answer her question, Hong Lu was very happy. "Aren't you a great painter?" "No, I'm a photographer." "Photographer? Then you must be very skilled at taking pictures of me so beautifully. What is the name of this machine? Did you make it?" "Camera, used for taking photos." Su Yang's photography skills are indeed quite good, at least he can support himself. He has accumulated some savings in the past 2 years and also bought a lot of photography equipment. Unconsciously, there was a slight increase in communication with Hong Lu. Su Yang really can't bear to be cold and violent, such a silly and clumsy girl. Occasionally speaking a few words should not be a big deal, just consider it as talking to oneself. Looking at those innocent and cute photos on the computer, Su Yang felt a little lost in thought. These photos should also be my own hallucination, and by the time my illness is cured, I'm afraid I won't be able to see them. But it would be a pity if such a beautiful photo cannot be saved. We need to find a way. After much thought, drawing is still the most reliable. Unconsciously, time had already arrived at 12 o'clock noon. My stomach is a bit hungry. Su Yang has just finished his work these past few days, so today is considered his vacation and he is too lazy to cook for himself. So I took out my phone and prepared to order takeout. Next to her, Hong Lu leaned over and curiously looked at the dish pictures on her phone screen. Snow and Ice City, Walashi, Gnawed Chicken, Spicy Hot Pot. What are these? Do you have anything you like to eat? Hong Lu's eyes lit up as she looked at her phone and swallowed, then obediently said, "I'm not picky about food. I'll eat whatever you want. This fried chicken looks quite delicious." So Su Yang ordered a family bucket, then put down his phone and continued browsing the news. Hong Lu looked at his movements and then at the kitchen, somewhat puzzled. After a while, he whispered. "It's okay not to eat fried chicken, but rice, mantou, noodles and pickles." Su Yang felt both amused and pitiful at her cautious appearance. So he explained, "I'm too lazy to cook. I ordered takeout, and when the restaurant is ready, it will be delivered directly." Oh. So it's like this. Hong Lu let go of her worries. The phone rang as soon as it was put down. In the curious gaze of Hong Lu, Su Yang answered the phone. It was a call from my friend Lin Xianping, with a note indicating that it was a second shipment. "Are you available? Hurry up and help. Are there any antiques that need to be photographed again?" "Yeah, I just caught a few clumsy thieves and the museum took over a batch of cultural relics. There are many that need to be repaired, which makes me have to work overtime again. Wait a moment, I'll go over after lunch." There was no nonsense between the two, and they hung up the phone after speaking. "Who are you talking to?" asked Hong Lu, friend. Lin Xianping is Su Yang's college classmate and also his only friend. A good friend is naturally unconventional. He was a prominent figure in the school during his college years. After being elected as the president of the student union, he did not follow the crowd, but instead negotiated with the school with a group of younger brothers, fighting for many rights for the students, such as renovating the school sports field, installing air conditioning in dormitories, expanding campus broadband, and so on. However, he was also seen as a thorn in the head by the school authorities and regarded as an outsider by many students. Of course, in Su Yang's eyes, a friend is a pure second-rate, just like his notes. In order to sharpen his bouncy temperament, Lin Xuanping's family also arranged for him to work as a cultural relic restoration engineer, currently employed at the Yang'an Museum. The museum occasionally needs to take photos of cultural relics, create 3D models, or take promotional brochures. At such times, he will ask Su Yang to help. "Are you going out later?" asked Red Du with a probe. Su Yang nodded. "Can I come with you then? I know a lot of things, even if it's just serving tea and water." Su Yang shook his head. He didn't want to talk to himself and be seen by others. Honglu was slightly disappointed. In no time, the takeout arrived. There is a certain reason why fried chicken is so popular. Upon smelling the fragrance, Honglu's eyes stiffened. Honglu learned Su Yang's movements and put disposable gloves on her hands. But the hands are too small, and the gloves are wrinkled. Su Yang inserted the straw into the cola again and handed it to her, gesturing for her to taste it. Taking the iced cola, Honglu took a sip and her face immediately wrinkled. The taste of this sugar water is so strange. It's tongue-piercing. Watching her delicate eyebrows twirl, Su Yang's lips showed a hint of a smile. "Open the fried chicken and eat it. This fried chicken is so delicious. It doesn't look like chicken. Hiccup. This thing shouldn't be cheap, right? The photographer in Chapter 5 should be me." You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Not long after, fried chicken, hamburgers, and French fries all entered the stomachs of the two. A whole family bucket with nothing left. My appetite has grown again. Su Yang secretly sighed to himself. He cleaned up the garbage, brought his equipment, and prepared to go out. Honglu stood obediently at the door, eagerly watching him change his shoes. After discovering that Su Yang had no intention of taking her with him, a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. After Su Yang opened the door, she quickly asked, "When can you come back?" Su Yang glanced at her and saw a hint of concern on her face, so he said, "I don't know, it's probably going to be very late, probably after dark." "So your illness won't be okay, will it?" Su Yang shook his head. Bang! Close the door. The girl's figure gradually disappeared into the crack of the door, with a lonely expression and a somewhat lonely figure. Su Yang suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. If she's not here, she shouldn't have anyone to talk to, right? But she's just her own illusion, and when she's not around, she probably disappears. Besides, such a big person, staying alone for a while won't do much. He'll be back tonight. The autumn wind blows, and withered and yellow ginkgo leaves fall from the trees, feeling a bit bleak. Walking to the entrance of the yard, Su Yang stopped in his tracks. The sound of Honglu kept echoing in my mind, as clear as a silver bell. Looking back, it was as if through the door, I saw Honglu standing blankly behind the door, waiting for her return. Although she was just an illusion, she was so pitiful, perhaps a microcosm of her past. Su Yang took a deep breath and let out a light sigh. I am still too soft-hearted after all. Turn around, go back to the door, take out the key and open it. Honglu still stood in place, staring in surprise. Did you come back so soon? Is it already dark? Su Yang rolled his eyes and walked into the living room. He turned on the TV he hadn't used for a long time, picked up the remote control, and introduced its purpose to Honglu. This is called a TV, which stores a lot of programs to pass the time. This is a remote control. The girl looked stunned, but quickly learned to be attracted by the TV screen, and her eyes were full of novelty. If you're hungry, there are eggs and noodles in the refrigerator. Forget it, this is whole wheat bread. If you're hungry, eat this. This is a water dispenser. If you're thirsty, use a cup to catch water. Honglu kept nodding her head, taking note with her heart. Before Su Yang left again, Honglu grabbed the doorknob and sincerely thanked, "Uncle, you're a good person. Not only did you save us, but you were also willing to take me in. Thank you." Although Su Yang couldn't understand her words, that gratitude was not false. Even if this gratitude came from an illusion, it made Su Yang feel much better. Going out again, riding an electric bike, half an hour later, Su Yang arrived at the Yang'an Museum. Today's security seems to be very strict. Su Yang took out his work permit and walked inside with ease. In a spacious and bright room, Lin Xianping, with short hair, was sitting at the workbench playing games with his legs crossed. "Didn't you say you were busy? Why are you alone?" "I'm busy right now, I'm running out of time playing games." Su Yang stared at him expressionlessly. "I'm joking, Uncle Air and his team went to have lunch. They killed their family with righteousness and left me here to watch the show." Lin Qiliu, the second uncle of Lin Xianping, is the director of the Yang'an Museum and an elder in the literary and artistic circles. He has a considerable reputation in the field, and after retirement, most of his energy is devoted to the museum, dedicated to protecting cultural relics. "Where is the thing?" "Don't worry, take a picture of this painting first and wait for me to finish this one." Lin Xianping pointed to the workbench, on which lay a pair of ink-wash landscape paintings. Su Yang put on his gloves, looked around twice, and noticed the signature. Tang Bohu's painting. Authentic. Can there still be counterfeits? This is a museum and we don't accept counterfeit goods. Su Yang took out his camera and began to take detailed photos. Calligraphy and painting are among the cultural relics that are relatively easy to capture, and there are no requirements for techniques. As long as the resolution of the camera is a bit higher, it will be fine and taken quickly. Looking at the landscape painting, Su Yang suddenly had a thought. Would it be more appropriate to use ink painting techniques to draw red dew? However, his level of ink painting is very poor, far inferior to sketching, and he can only dispel this idea. A few minutes later, Lin Xianping put down his phone and brought Su Yang to the next door. On the ground and display shelves, there are many antiques, and some cultural relics can still be seen with soil attached. Several staff members are carefully cleaning up these objects. There are quite a few things. Su Yang glanced at them roughly, at least more than 30 pieces, and from bottles and jars to swords and halberds, there are also a variety of varieties. And these don't seem like a batch of goods, do they? Lin Xianping shook his head and said, "The largest tomb raiding gang in the 3 southeastern states has gathered from many tombs, all of which are good things. I heard they recently dug up a prince's tomb. The prince loves collecting, and there are a few national treasure level items in the tomb that are kept in the safe by his uncle alone. If you want to see them, I can take you to have a long experience." Su Yang ignored him, picked up the camera, found the fill light board, and silently started working. The staff next to Su Yang is also familiar with him, knowing that he is a friend of the director's nephew and doesn't like to talk. Lin Xianping felt embarrassed to continue fishing and started cleaning up cultural relics, chatting with the young man next to him. This time it's really not a good thing, there are more than 10 first-class cultural relics. Isn't that right? If I really want to go overseas, it's really heartbreaking. Didn't I hear that I also lost a bottle? Yes, the red jade teapot spring vase, from the picture, is likely from the June kiln, from the Song dynasty, which is very rare and can be said to be unique. Isn't sacrificial offerings only available after the Ming dynasty? It existed in the Song dynasty, but it was not mature. At that time, it was all copper red glaze, while sacrificial red was iron red glaze, which is why it is rare. I also heard an interesting thing, which is that this group of tomb robbers' arrest was also accidental. Oh. What's going on? I heard they had made an appointment with a remote place to do business at home, but a photographer happened to pass by and take photos nearby. The group of people felt guilty and thought they had caught them, so they stopped the photographer and forced them to delete the photos. And then what? Then there was a commotion. A patrol officer happened to pass by and mediate the dispute, but the police were so experienced that they immediately realized that something was wrong with this group of people. You can just say that the girl suspected taking a secret photo. Why are these old men afraid of taking a secret photo? Thanks to that photographer. These cultural relics are really going to be smuggled abroad, and the losses will be too great. Lin Xianping turned his head to look at Su Yang with a smile and said, "They are all photographers from Yang'an. Do you know this person? If I want my second uncle to know, I must thank him with tears in my eyes." Su Yang hesitated for a moment before nodding. Seeing him nod, Lin Xianping was a bit surprised. He knew that Su Yang didn't have many friends and didn't even socialize in his daily life. "Do you really know each other?" Su Yang paused for a moment before speaking. "If nothing unexpected happens, that photographer should be me." Chapter 6. She is not her own illusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Yang rarely jokes, and Lin Xianping hesitated for a few seconds before excitedly hugging his friend's shoulder and shouting loudly. "Sleeping trough, brother, you have made great achievements this time. Do you know how precious these cultural relics are? Take the painting outside to the auction. The starting price is 8 digits. Money comes second, and the key is that several cultural relics have high research value." Not to mention how excited Lin Xianping and a few young men were, introducing the preciousness of these cultural relics, and praising Su Yang's contributions. At this moment, Su Yang's mood was exceptionally complex. Because he remembered the words the girl had thanked him, the previously incomprehensible content seemed to connect now. Honglu, that girl, is she really just an illusion of herself? The lost sacrificial red jade teapot and spring bottle, her bright red skirt, and the golden decoration on the skirt. A bold guess came to my mind. Immediately, Su Yang felt a bit amused again, and his idea was too absurd. However, after a moment, Su Yang seemed to remember something. He pulled Lin Xianping to the corner, opened the camera, found a photo taken in the morning, and handed it to Lin Xianping in front of the plane. This is what you took. The model is quite beautiful. Is it a Hanfu advertisement? This Hanfu is also very exquisite. Lin Xianping can also see red dew. She's not her own illusion, but rather a real person. After realizing this, Su Yang's mood became a bit complicated. Apart from worries and doubts, there is also a hint of curiosity and a hint of inexplicable joy. Recalling the innocent and lovely appearance of the young girl, he couldn't help but start imagining. She should be sitting on the sofa watching TV now, right? I don't know if I'm watching a TV drama or a variety show. She seems to lack common sense and finds many common things very novel, and her words and actions are also different from ordinary people. Why is this happening? Lin Xianping reached out and shook his hand in front of Su Yang. What kind of god are you walking on? What am I asking you? Why are you showing me this photo? Is it possible that you took the Hanfu advertisement? Su Yang regained his senses, shook his head and remained silent, ready to go back and continue shooting antiques. Lin Xianping glanced suspiciously at Su Yang. Based on his understanding of Su Yang, it feels like this kid has something on his mind. He leaned over again, pulled the camera, looked at the girl in the ancient costume in the photo, and finally realized that it was not right. Lin Xianping stared and asked, "The landscape paintings on this wall are very familiar. It seems like this is your home, isn't it?" Su Yang removed the photo without responding. Lin Xianping seemed to have discovered a new continent, his eyes lit up, and he began to delve deeper into it. This little girl is very beautiful. How did she get along with her? She brought everyone home. When did it happen? Su Yang's face remained calm, but in fact, he already had a headache. Don't look at Lin Xuanping's carefree appearance. In fact, he had a serious conversation about a relationship in college, which was unforgettable, and the result was quite tragic. This led to a very casual attitude towards Lin Xianping and his lifelong events afterwards. But he has an additional hobby, which is particularly fond of pulling red strings for Su Yang. Su Yang said calmly, "Nothing, just take a few photos." "Humph, this little girl is so cute, are you really not interested?" Su Yang didn't respond, picked up the camera and continued to take photos of antiques. Lin Xianping felt a sense of drama upon seeing this. He knew that Su Yang was relatively introverted and liked to keep things hidden in his heart. So he immediately applied it like a dog skin ointment and kept asking questions. How is this little girl's personality? Which year is it? How tall is it? What's your name? Is the voice sweet or not? Although Su Yang remained silent in taking photos, under the constant entanglement of his friends, the figure and voice of Honglu kept coming to Su Yang's mind. Will she be bored watching TV alone at home? There is food in the refrigerator, so you shouldn't be hungry. It wasn't until after dinner that more than 10 staff members returned to the studio that Lin Xianping calmed down. After taking the photos, it is necessary to use a computer to model and combine the photos to reshape the 3D model of the antique in the software. This is also Lin Xuanping's job, but it is very time-consuming and laborious, so Su Yang also came to help. In their leisure time, staff inevitably talk about topics related to cultural relics. In the past, Su Yang never interjected, but after hearing them mention the lost sacrificial red jade teapot spring bottle, Su Yang took the initiative to ask Lin Xianping, "Is the lost bottle very precious?" "I haven't seen any real objects either, but Uncle Air studied the photos and said they are a unique treasure." "Is it from the Song dynasty? Do you know the specific year?" "I haven't seen the actual object, which is difficult to judge, but it is most likely an early June kiln." "Why are you asking this? Aren't you not interested in antiques?" "Feel free to ask. The Song dynasty has been almost 1,000 years since then." He recalled the ruse skirt on Honglu's body, which was ancient and fragrant. As a photographer, he has been exposed to many modern imitations of ancient costumes. But Honglu has a very unique style. Is it possible that she has traveled from ancient times? Su Yang immediately shook his head in self-deprecation. "Hee, what are you thinking? She is more likely to have mental illness, after all, she has had it before." The sun is gradually setting westward, and Su Yang is still focused on his work. In the living room of the home, a TV drama ends and advertisements are playing on the screen. Honglu also understood that these repeated short films were not very meaningful, as if she remembered something, and her gaze suddenly turned to the trash can. After hesitating for a while, he stood up and dug out the painting paper that Su Yang had just thrown away from the trash can. Gradually unrolling and flattening the crumpled sketch paper, she looked at the lead-colored lines on it, and her expression on her small face was very surprised. It is obvious that she has seen sketching for the first time. And it still depicts itself on it. Compared to freehand ink painting, these line segments depict things more realistically. She also picked up a pencil and tried to draw on the back of the paper. After practicing for a while, she found a blank piece of paper. Not long after, a sketch appeared in her pen. Su Yang sat in front of the computer, looking very focused on his work. Honglu was very satisfied with her work, smiled coquettishly, and then felt a bit conflicted and guilty. She wanted to roll up the drawing paper and throw it back into the trash can, but she was also reluctant to part with it. The sky is getting late. When Su Yang rode his electric bike back home, it was already past 7 p.m. The museum is in charge of dinner. In the past, Su Yang used to have a meal, but today it's different. With an extra person at home, Su Yang couldn't help but feel a bit worried. After finishing his work, he immediately rushed back. I also ordered a few dishes to pack and bring back along the way. Park the electric bike and walk into the yard, where the tall ginkgo tree stands quietly. Standing in the yard, watching the outline of the house gradually merge into the darkness, Su Yang suddenly felt a little uneasy. Is she still here? Could it have already left? Or, is this just one's own dream? Chapter 7. I am also a cultural relic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The autumn wind blew by, and as he watched a few ginkgo leaves fall, Su Yang suddenly woke up. What's wrong with me? Why did I suddenly worry about gains and losses? I've only known her for just over 10 hours. Shaking his head, Su Yang walked to the door, took out the key, and opened it. The living room was pitch black, and the street lights shone through the window, making it very quiet. The TV is also turned off. It seems that the existence of that girl is really just an illusion. Su Yang, who had long been accustomed to loneliness, suddenly felt empty in his heart. She should have already left, and I don't know if she has encountered any trouble. A faint sadness and disappointment emerged from the bottom of my heart, like a leaking ship, dragging Su Yang's mood down. After changing his shoes and not turning on the lights, he dragged his feet weakly into the living room and placed the food on the table. Then, by the light outside the window, Su Yang saw a small figure. Curled up in the corner of the sofa, sleeping soundly. The bright red skirt on her body seemed to fill the loophole in her heart, making Su Yang's mood start to rise again. She's still here. Turning on the light, Honglu also woke up, rubbed her eyes, and sat up from the sofa. You're back. Why is it all dark now? What time is it now? 8 o'clock. For quarters of a day. It's already so late. Speaking, Honglu took a sniff, seemingly smelling a fragrance, and her gaze involuntarily turned to the packing box on the dining table. Although very greedy, Honglu sat obediently on the sofa, her face filled with anticipation. Su Yang opened the lid and greeted her, "Come and eat." Honglu then eagerly sat down at the dining table and said, "It smells so delicious. With so many dishes, what is this?" "Taro. Braised beef in brown sauce, that's potato." "What about this red one?" "Carrots." Upon hearing him answer her questions, Honglu kept asking one after another. She felt a change in Su Yang's attitude towards herself. Although I don't know why, at least I am willing to communicate with her. The girl wrote happiness on her face. After eating the delicious food for a while, Honglu tentatively asked, "Are you going out this afternoon to take photos of someone else?" "It's similar, but it's just for taking photos and keeping records of cultural relics." "Cultural relics. It's just an antique." "I know. I can also be considered a cultural relic." Upon hearing these words, Su Yang stopped his movements and turned his gaze to the girl, then looked at her again. The bright red skirt reminded Su Yang of the bottle. After a pause, Su Yang still asked directly. "What do you mean by calling yourself a cultural relic?" "I'm a bottle, haven't you seen my original appearance? A red jade pot and a spring bottle." Honglu blinked her eyes, her expression innocent, not as if she was lying. Su Yang felt a bit absurd, but continued to ask, "So why did you become a human?" For this question, Honglu also felt a bit distressed. "I don't know why, suddenly I became a human. Uncle and uncle have never seen me like this before. Do you know what's going on?" Su Yang knew it and could only shake his head. But a guess came to his mind. Delusional schizophrenia. Su Yang. "And what about your family?" "I don't have a family. The craftsman who made me has long passed away, and I am the only one left behind in the porcelain we fired together. At first, I was placed in the palace. Later, I was collected and met my uncles and uncles. Later, I was buried in the ground for a long time, without any light. However, my uncles taught me a lot. In the young girl's narration, Su-young felt the loneliness hidden beneath innocence. However, whether she is a patient or not, at least she is a living person. Can I still take her in myself? This question made Su-young hesitate a bit. He didn't come up with an answer until he finished eating and tidied up the lunchbox. Sitting in front of the computer, Su-young checked for similar symptoms. He has a certain understanding of schizophrenia, and most patients are relatively safe as long as they don't intentionally provoke them. Su-young lives alone at home with many vacant rooms, so it's not difficult to take her in. She just cooks more meals in her daily life. At most, spend some more money to buy her some clothes for washing. But if her family comes knocking on her door in the future, there will be too many potential troubles. After all, he is a man, and Honglu is so beautiful. Some things are unclear, but if such an innocent red dew were to fall outside, Su-young would be a bit reluctant. Besides, Su-young still feels a little reluctant in his heart. After graduating from college, he has been living alone, thinking that he has become accustomed to loneliness. But when the innocent girl broke in, he realized that there seemed to be something different. There is an extra person in the empty home. In less than a day, he was already somewhat concerned. It's not that I have any ulterior motives towards Honglu, it's just a simple desire for someone to be with me. Honglu sat on the sofa, watching the TV series, occasionally glancing at Su-young, realizing that he was thinking about something, and even deliberately turned down the volume. I don't know if she was too tired or just ate too full, or maybe the sofa was too soft. Anyway, in a few minutes, Honglu leaned back on the sofa and fell asleep again. Su-young turned around and saw her back leaning against the sofa, her head tilted and sleeping soundly. His mood suddenly calmed down. It's not a big deal to let her stay for a few days. So Su-young got up, went to tidy up a guest room, and then went out to buy towels, toothbrushes, and other daily necessities from the nearby small supermarket. Half an hour later, Su-young returned to the living room and found that Honglu had already collapsed on the sofa, curled up in a ball and sleeping soundly. Occasionally, I would smack my lips, as if savoring dinner. Su-young couldn't help but slightly raise the corner of his mouth and stood in front of the sofa, staring at Honglu for a moment. I couldn't bear to wake her up. Why not find a thin blanket and cover her body? Turn off the TV. Su-young sat back in front of the computer, picked up the camera, and copied the photos onto the computer. Accidentally scanning, Su-young discovered the sketch on the coffee table. Didn't I throw it away myself? Did she flip it out? Su-young picked up a few wrinkled art papers and found that there were traces of alteration on them, and the areas that had not been fully painted were patched up. At the beginning, the technique was very unfamiliar, but it should have a foundation and adapt quickly. The first two photos are not very good, but by the end, they have already become more and more stylish. When he reached the last photo, he immediately noticed the extra painting on the back. It's very obvious that it looks like I'm sitting in front of the computer. Very lifelike. She didn't lie to herself, she really learned how to draw. And I feel that my level is even higher than myself. Unlike traditional sketching, this painting employs some freehand techniques to convey its focused appearance at the time. There is also a signature next to it. Yucheng, Honglu. The handwriting is very delicate. Chapter 8. Can you take me to see them? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su-young put down the painting paper and looked at the sleeping girl, feeling even more calm. After waiting for a while, Su-young entered. Yucheng in the search bar. It was discovered that this is the birthplace of Jun Kiln, formerly known as Junzhou. In the Ming dynasty, it was renamed Yucheng due to taboos. He also found a documentary introducing Jun porcelain and casually clicked on it to watch. The night is getting darker. Honglu woke up in a daze. Watching the beautiful chandelier emit soft light, her mind seemed to have a short circuit, and her eyes were full of doubts. Where are you? After a while, she recalled her situation and immediately lifted her body to search for a certain figure. Seeing Su Yang sitting in front of the computer, Honglu calmed down and found the warm blanket on her body, so she felt even more at ease. Holding onto the blanket, Honglu wanted to continue sleeping, but the screen on the monitor caught her attention. It seems to be firing porcelain. Her strong curiosity flared up again, and she lifted the blanket and leaned in. Su Yang was wearing headphones in order not to disturb Honglu's sleep. At first, he didn't notice Honglu. But a few strands of hair scattered and hung on Su Yang's ear, itchy and crispy. Turning her head, she noticed that Honglu was standing behind her, slightly bent down, focused on watching the documentary. However, because she couldn't hear any sound, she could only read the subtitles below. The subtitles were very small and in simplified Chinese, so she had to lean forward and carefully recognize them. Su Yang paused the video and took off his headphones. Honglu looked at the still picture, her face filled with doubts, and pointed to the picture, asking, "Hey! Why isn't this moving?" Su Yang. "This is a video, it can be paused." "Video? Isn't this thing called a computer?" "A computer refers to this machine that can be used to play videos." "Why is it called a computer?" "Because it can do many things, it is very powerful, and some functions are better than our brain, and it uses electricity." "Oh." After a moment of pause, the doubts in Honglu's eyes resurfaced. Su Yang felt a little headache and didn't wait for her to continue asking questions. He moved away a bit and pointed to the nearby stool, saying, "Sit down and watch together." Honglu quickly nodded and moved the stool to Su Yang's side, sitting down obediently. Continuing to play the video, the background music of the video and the melodious side-scrolling sound come from the speaker. However, when the episode changed, there was a pause in the narration, and the room once again heard the innocent questioning voice of Honglu. "What does Celsius mean?" The unit of measurement for temperature, 0 degrees is the temperature at which water freezes, and 100 degrees is the temperature at which water boils. Honglu pointed to the refrigerator in the kitchen and said, "It seems very cold inside that cabinet." "How much is it?" "It should be 6 degrees above, and minus 20 degrees below." "Under 0. It means it's very cold, even colder than ice." "I know, winter in the north is below 0. "Yes. What is your temperature?" "Is a person's body temperature 37 degrees? "Hey. Is everyone the same?" "Am I also 37 degrees Celsius?" Su Yang nodded first, but was also somewhat uncertain. If she really excels in porcelain, then it's hard to say. Coincidentally, Su Yang was also a little curious. He picked up the smartwatch on the table and said to Honglu, "Put out your hand, I'll take your temperature." Honglu extended her right hand, palms facing upwards, and her 5 fingers spread out. The small palm was tense, emitting a healthy red hue. Su Yang clasped his watch onto her exposed wrist. My fingertips accidentally touched the young girl's white wrist, and I noticed that her skin was not only pure white, but also very smooth and smooth. After a few seconds, the smartwatch displayed the girl's body information. Body temperature 36.5 degrees, heart rate 78. She is no different from a normal person, or in other words, she is a normal person, and any porcelain becoming sperm is just her delusion. How many degrees is this? Asked Honglu curiously, not knowing Arabic numerals. 36.5 degrees. Isn't it 30.7 degrees? Only half a degree difference, this is the normal range of fluctuations. What is your temperature? It should also be around 37 degrees. Really? Su Yang looked at Honglu with curious eyes, feeling that if she didn't respond, she would definitely continue to ask. So he prepared to take off his watch and measure his temperature. Honglu was enthusiastic and grabbed his palm directly, sticking the display screen of the watch directly onto his wrist. Is that enough? Her little hand caught her palm, and the backs of their hands pressed against each other, smooth and tender, very soft. Su Yang's heart was shaken, and his thoughts seemed to have been paused, with a moment of stagnation. Although I usually come into contact with some models, they are different from Honglu at this moment. The girl's face was also flushed with a hint of shyness. Su Yangma remained silent and withdrew his hand. The sensor is on the back of the watch, this won't work. He took off the watch and put it on his wrist. 36.4 point. The decimal point is 30.6 degrees and 4 millimeters. So my body temperature is a little higher than yours. Should I warm up a bit? You have to hug each other to know. Su Yang took a sip of water but didn't answer. She pointed to the already started second episode and gestured for her to continue watching the documentary. The red dew subsided for a while. But only for a while. She took advantage of the gap in the narration and asked, 1,000 tales of Baidu, should it be very high? Aren't you porcelain? You should have experienced it firsthand, don't you know better than me? Is it porcelain that's cooked? Do you still remember when your mother was pregnant? It makes sense. After a while, the documentary came to an end. Honglu asked again, is the place in Yucheng still firing porcelain now? Su Yang nodded and said, yes, there are still quite a few. Moreover, the craftsmanship has been improved, and the burnt product looks even better. Honglu was a bit skeptical and said, really? But when I was buried in the ground, I heard that June porcelain had already been lost. It has already been reproduced. The current technology is very advanced, and ancient craftsmanship is nothing. Honglu looked at the computer, TV, refrigerator, lights in the room. It's really impressive. So he nodded convincingly again. After a pause, Honglu remembered something very important and hesitated, saying, so, when I read the news that even tomb robbers have been caught. Su Yang nodded. Will uncle and uncle be locked up? Su Yang has understood who the uncle and uncle she mentioned are, and the cultural relics unearthed together with her. Those cultural relics will be placed in museums for protection, and if there is any damage, professionals will also carry out repairs. What is a museum? A place specifically designed for storing cultural relics. Are you going to the museum to take photos of cultural relics today? Su Yang nodded. Honglu immediately asked with anticipation, can you take me to see them? Chapter 9. Is she really a master of porcelain? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Should we find some elementary school science popularization textbooks for her in Chapter 10? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. ZZ. Eggs quickly coagulate in hot oil, emitting a tempting aroma. Honglu held a spatula and flipped the fried egg over, its golden color even more tempting. She is very smart. With just a simple lesson, she already knows how to use a natural gas stove. Fry eggs out of the pot, boil water and cook noodles. Soon, 2 bowls of noodles were served. A large bowl of noodles, green lettuce, paired with fried eggs, is very delicious. She brought noodles in soup to Su Yang, and Honglu looked at him expectantly, waiting for comments. Su Yang took a sip of the noodles, took a bite of the fried egg, and nodded. The saltiness is suitable, and the fried egg is also very fragrant. Although it was the first time to cook, and it was the simplest clear soup noodles, Su Yang could see that Honglu still had some cooking skills, at least better than himself. Perhaps, in addition to common sense in life, you can also find some cooking videos for her to watch, so that she may also be able to enjoy some delicious food. Red Lu was also very happy to receive Su Yang's recognition. She humbly said, the main reason is that the ingredients are fresh. The color of the peanut oil is too beautiful. In the past, it was at least a tribute. But I'm not very familiar with those seasonings, so I only added a little MSG. That's enough. It's good to have a light meal in the morning. I can still cook a lot of dishes, but it's not in the fridge. Today I'll teach you some common sense, and tomorrow I'll take you to the market to buy groceries. Aha! Upon hearing that she could go out, Honglu was also filled with anticipation. After breakfast, Su-young began to impart knowledge to Honglu. From clothing, food, housing, and transportation to various aspects of society, but the most important thing is to teach her how to use a computer and tablet, so that she can search for any problems on her own. Because she doesn't know how to use Wubi and Pinyin, Su-young specifically designed a voice input method for her. Unconsciously, 2 hours passed. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Su-young leaned against the sofa, gazing at the garden view in the yard, his mind empty. He held a cup of hot tea in his hand, occasionally taking a sip to moisten his slightly sore throat. Su-young never thought that being a teacher would be so tiring, especially since Honglu is still a student who loves to ask questions. What he said today is probably more than the first 9 months of this year combined. Why drink hot water? What kind of bacteria are they? Can they be eaten? Are they delicious? Where do bacteria in water come from? Next to her, Honglu was speaking into the microphone, converting it into text and searching for answers in the browser. Watching her question gradually deviate and become strange, Su-young felt a slight headache. Because he has already answered many similar questions. Should we find some elementary school science popularization textbooks for her? Pipa. The autumn wind blew by, and a slight noise came from the yard, disrupting Su-young's thoughts. That was the sound of ginkgo fruits falling on the bluestone slab, which reminded Su-young of something he had not done yet. Let's take a break first and do a favor. Su-young gave Honglu a plastic bag and took her to the yard. He himself was holding a long bamboo pole and began tapping the fruit on the branch. Ginkgo biloba fruits fell with a thud and smashed onto the bluestone slab. Many white fruits, exclaimed Honglu in surprise. Su-young. Ginkgo. Red Du pointed to the fruit on the ground and said, Ginkgo biloba is the fruit. This fruit is very valuable, it used to be a royal tribute. Su-young heard about this for the first time and found it very interesting. But this fruit is clearly green and yellow. Honglu explained seriously, the green and yellow skin is the outer layer, cannot be eaten, toxic. There are white fruit pits inside. After breaking them open, eat the kernels inside. However, don't eat too much, it's easy to have diarrhea. Don't you know? Of course Su-young knows, but he just doesn't know the term white fruit. Honglu asked curiously, do you also want to collect white fruits to eat? Su-young shook his head and said, Uncle Wang next door would come to me every year to demand it and use it to make soup. This one can relieve cough and clear the lungs. Does Uncle Wang have asthma? Su-young shook his head and said, Uncle Wang doesn't have it, but his wife often coughs. Do you still know medical skills? I've learned a little from Uncle Zhang, but I haven't shown anyone my illness, said Honglu shyly. Uncle Zhang. Su-young doesn't remember those cultural relics with the surname Zhang. Red Lu reminded, Uncle Zhang is a medical book, it seems you haven't taken a photo of him. Su-young was a bit puzzled. Didn't he see a medical book at the museum yesterday? Perhaps it is quite precious, so it was protected by Lin Xuanping's second uncle. More than 10 minutes later, Su-young put down the bamboo pole. The ginkgo trees are very tall, and some fruits cannot be harvested, so they can only wait for them to fall on their own. Then Su-young and Honglu picked up fruits together. Ginkgo biloba leaves are golden, and she is wearing a bright red skirt, creating a vivid yet harmonious image. Su-young couldn't help but go back to his room, take out his camera, and take 2 photos. About 3/4 of an hour later, the two of them put all the fruits into plastic bags and also cleaned up the fallen leaves in the yard. While resting on the stone bench in the yard, Su-young looked at the rustling tree and asked, was it also called ginkgo in ancient times? Not really, Uncle Lu told me that a long time ago, ginkgo was called the ping tree. Ping. Red Du waved her small hand and gestured in mid-air, next to the wooden character, add a peaceful peace. It wasn't until the Song dynasty that it was renamed the ginkgo tree. Do you know the Shanglin Fu? I think I've heard of it before. Who wrote it? Sima Xiangru. There is a passage in it that mentions the ginkgo tree. Sha Tang Ke Zhu, Hua Feng Ping Qi, and the scales inside are ginkgo trees. Do you remember the original text? Left Kangwu, right Shiji. Seeing that Su Yang was interested, Honglu continued to recite and occasionally stopped to explain the meaning to Su Yang. Their identities seemed to have changed, becoming Su Yangwen and Honglu answering. Su Yang finds it very interesting. Looking at the silly girl, she actually knows a lot. It's just a slight disconnect from modern society. Not to mention anything else, even college students in the Chinese department may not be able to find a few who can memorize this Shanglin Fu. Su Yang checked the original text on his phone and found that he didn't even recognize many words inside. After the young girl finished reciting ancient texts, Su Yang extended his thumb. Very impressive, you should have memorized a lot of ancient texts, right? Honglu nodded with a shy smile and a hint of pride. It's okay, I've been buried underground for hundreds of years. Uncle and uncle teach me every day, and I'll gradually remember. Isn't this fruit meant for Uncle Wang? Let's take it together. Su Yang nodded and each person picked up a plastic bag. Opening the courtyard door, I saw an elderly man in his 60s cleaning up the fallen leaves in the alley. Seeing Su Yang open the door, the old man also smiled. Uncle Wang. This is this year's white fruit. Okay, Xiaoshu, I really trouble you. Come and sit down and have a drink of water. No trouble, it's about picking it up. Is this girl? My friend, he may need to stay at my house for a while.